Episode 2, Maintaining and Nurturing. Welcome to Talking Family Business. My name is Leah Crowley, and in this 6-episode series, we're taking a look at succession plans, cycles, and future-proofing family businesses. Today, HLB Man Judd partner Stephen Preen and Western Earth Moving's Managing Director Graham Ragg are going to sit down and discuss the original succession for WEM, when Graham's father Wal handed over the reins. And we're also going to take a look at the massive shifts in industry forcing them to remain ever nimble in their financial planning. Welcome to you both again.
Thank you, Leah.
Thanks, Leah.
Last episode, we kind of just did an overall, history of WEM and HLB Man Judd. But I want to get into the nitty-gritty today. I want to know what the plan was. And was the plan always for you, Graham, to take over your dad's role?
Thank you, Leah. Look, I think that it was a mysterious time. My dad was quieter on these sort of things. He was a hard but very fair man in all his dealings with work and with family. Extremely family proud, and taught me a lot about those sorts of things throughout, how to look after your family and so on. And it was clear that that's what was going to happen, but he was not an easy conversationalist to bring it to the table to talk about these things. And I think that'd be pretty fair from your point of view as well, wouldn't you think so, Steve?
Yeah, that'd be right, Graham.
Yeah, on how it went. But clearly, another way Steve operates, he can probably pull out that first chart that he drew up with the boxes that had the family names where things might go, because he's pretty good on the history.
Were you spot on?
Yeah, yes.
You can say it. You can say it. You were spot on.
And look, the journey was together all the way from there, exactly as to how it would work. So, Dad and I had the ideas, and then Steve and team put together as to how it might work and how best to make it work and how best to deal with financing the arrangements. And, I can say that's 86, that's a while back. I just had total trust in their advice and still do.
That's a big thing to say.
Well, once you have total trust, you don't need to go back. So that's how things work. Yep.
So, Stephen, in an ideal world, how far in advance should a family business start planning their succession plan, and when should they involve someone like you guys?
Leah, well, the succession plan really starts at any time. There's always going to be succession in some way down the track, and in order to put in an effective plan, you have to think through quite a few different areas of what you need to examine. And normally, the retirement plan is going to be the first plan, but that could be a way off. So you've got to look at the areas in that, and you follow through a retirement plan, a exit plan, a succession management plan, an equity management plan, and then your estate planning. So you've sort of got five areas which are very complex in all, and each of them needs thorough thought and progression and changing from time to time. So with Wal, we were back at the sort of the retirement plan phase to start with. So in that area, he would have to consider his own personal finances and how he was going to look after the family, not only Graham, but his daughter and other sons. So that sort of process will go through his mind, even though he mightn't have been showing things. But, he couldn't just walk out the door without having that finance arrangement for himself. His actually time of when he is going to retire, and then how the family is protected, and also taking into account the equity situation in Westerns, with Graham already owning fair bit of the part of the business.
Does that make it easier?
Having a plan?
Or having Graham already part owner?
I think it makes it easier because you've got succession in the back of your mind, and Graham wouldn't have been there unless he was the right person to start with.
I agree with that, Steve. I think that it's showing progressive succession is a good way to do things in a family business. It's introducing someone else into the role and the responsibilities. It's giving them, a fair go at holding the tiller and directing traffic. And it's showing the rest of the family that the business is in good hands and going to continue to be in good hands.
So confidence for the family.
Confidence for the family and continued growth. So, this is our second generation of doing the same sort of process.
And you face, at that initial stage when you are going to exit, obviously Wal would have faced various issues he was wrestling with in how he was going to deal with the family as a whole, because Graham was a driving force with him. They both came into Westerns together when Arthur exited, and they both, developed it, and Graham was there to push it along and make sure things did go the right way, and the relationships were developed and so forth. So they both had their equal strengths in taking the business forward.
Geez, this really just sort of indicates to me, at least, that as an advisor, you guys have to really take it case by case and also take into considerations all the different personalities within the family business.
Yeah, personalities become a big thing in a lot of businesses because, as we know, everybody's different. Everybody's wants are different. Everybody's emotional needs are different. And it does become a very big emotional type event because you've got a legacy. You've got something the family has developed, built upon, and you don't want to. If someone who's going to exit that business doesn't want to see that destroyed. By saying not destroyed, the answer might be that you sell the business. You don't necessarily have to pass it on to that generation because you might find that people aren't interested in continuing. So that's where you get into a lot of different scenarios where part of the family have got other expertise and want to pursue their own careers.
Not necessarily locked down to the family business.
They might hate what their mother and father have been building up and just want to reap the rewards in the right manner.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, because no one wants to see it destroyed.
Yeah, of course. There was something that you said then, Stephen, something about, Wal would have been thinking about this for a while. And because he'd spent so long in the business, running the business, Graham, how difficult was it for him to stop working?
Look, it was a really challenge for him. He loved what he was doing. He loved his family and his other interests. And, he eventually just realised it was time. And it was, I suppose, the conversation I'd been trying to have for a while as to where things were going. And he was a bit of an artful dodger on those sort of things and kept away from it. And I was respectful enough to leave him alone. And then one day he called me in and said, you can have a cup of tea with me. So I went and got 2 cups of tea, came back down, sat down. He said, I think it's time I go. Looked at me and packed up and walked out.
Just like that?
Just like that day, on that day. I went and saw him that night. I said, look, I need you to hang around for a while.
Yeah, right.
He said, no, I'm just telling you it's time to go. And 18 months later, I said, Dad, now it's time to go.
Okay.
So in that 18 months, he transitioned out and stepped back and back and back. But the thing he protected, and I've never forgotten, is looking after our customers' interests. And in the last week, I said to him one job, Dad, look, you've got to stop knocking out curb and gutter on this job. It looks like Swiss cheese. There's nothing left. It is good enough. So he was our quality officer to make sure we did not lower our standards, didn't let people down. And, in his last 16, 18 months, I can't remember exactly what it was, he backed off a lot, worked less days, and more so toured the paddocks and made sure the standards were right and that our relationships were right. And that's been invaluable. That's helped me so much with the transition through. And then after that, 16, 18 months, he did retire and spend more time on other activities, which was great.
So when this kind of thing happens, this is for both of you, you're not only dealing with the family, you're dealing with the staff and all the customers. How far in advance did you tell the customers, Graham, that Wal was transitioning out? By
that stage in 2000, certain customers related more to Dad still, and a lot related to me. We'd grown the business together, and probably I had he held his traditional customers closely, and they would talk to him on key issues, and he'd get those done. But we developed such that we tried to make the business not reliant just on the 2 of us anyway. So we'd start to branch out. That was part of the advice from Manjard. You need to have a greater base strength all the time. And, in the 20 years since, we've advanced that considerably to do that same sort of thing. As the leaders of the business, you've got to have those key relationships. You must have that. And we've always made sure that Mike and I now, we're available to any customer anytime. And we say, look, we can't answer everything, but you'll definitely have a full, concise, satisfactory answer within 24 hours. So, we had to bolster it out and make sure there was enough warning. I mean, that worked okay.
Stephen, how important is it for the staff to know that there's going to be this big transitional change? For something like culture, for work culture, that's got to be something that could tip it. right?
Yeah. Well, it's important that they understand and people are informed of what's going to take place. But in the case of WEM, I mean, Graham was always there and they could see both of them steering the operations. So that made a hell of a difference. Whereas if you had somebody coming in cold, well, who knows what would happen. Yeah, so it's important to have that successor role being developed.
Yeah, I'd worked as a director and the general manager for quite some time, quite a number of years. And in my progression through the business, I'd done everything starting off, washing cars out the back of the shed and painting pegs and doing the kids' things, and then gradually going through and doing survey work and project management and all the roles through the business, a lot of estimating for a long time, gradually to having the key relationships with customers, suppliers, and the key relationship with staff as to setting standards for them and directing their activities and catching them doing the right thing and setting the behaviours right and that sort of stuff. So you've got to make it a gradual process.
Yeah, otherwise people are going to get defensive.
Yeah, and Wal wasn't, as long as I was disappearing, Graham used to speak to him every night in the ride up to his later years, didn't you, about what was going on in the business?
Exactly.
Because he was interested and people could always talk to him or whatever. So it's a great thing to have.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to still have Dad then for another 15 years after he'd retired. And we spoke every day. And I remember in cutting forward, it's not quite on script here, but cutting forward to taking round to show him when it must have been 2014 or so. I took him around an iPad to show him some construction, some videos, what was going on. And he was sitting back in a big chair and I gave it to him to look at and he started looking, he's pretty impressed. And as I walked off, he watched me walk and he turned it side on like looking, where the hell's the TV on the back of this thing? I just don't get it. He never understood what an iPad was, but he loved it. So the pride that he still had for the next 15 years in what everyone had achieved and was continuing to achieve, and he recognised continuously the improving standards, improving output and the improvement in the people, which is great. So the skills about encouraging and getting people to grow were ingrained into me early. And certainly the fact of having a strong relationship with business partners such as Man Judd and others is essential. And that was, certainly that was drummed into me from an early stage, the benefits of those sorts of things.
How has, over those years, the industry has changed a lot and you guys have obviously had to adapt to that. Has that been something that having an advisory team like, Stephen from HLB Man Judd, has that helped you?
Look, it really has. They've helped us benchmark in lots of ways, whether it's been changes that came in some years ago with WHS standards, environmental standards, ways of employing people, different contractual arrangements with larger developers, payment patterns, Security Payments Act, various things like this along the way. We consult with these guys and get the advice on what's the right way. What's the right way for us that is compliant, that still looks after our people long term.
You have developed a very strong financial area at WEMS in the later years, and that went back to just starting with sort of various management reports and so forth, which gave them the information they needed and developed from there because the business was growing. And when you hit bad times, you've got to be on top of it, and that teaches you a few things.
Yeah, we can go back to a time, as you said, early 90s, where we had a good relationship with our bank, but they didn't think it was quite as good as we did. For a little while then.
Yeah, right.
A little bit testy, but it survived.
Yeah.
And it's prospered since, which is great.
Stephen, how much do you have to keep tabs of the changes within different clients' industries? Or are you able to use what you know and the knowledge you know in terms of business and running a business to adapt it to certain industries?
No, I think you have to have a knowledge of the business and sort of know what's going on out there, where the markets are, and try and keep up to date in the areas you are working in, because things move very fast, especially these days. 10, 20 years ago it was different story. Not today.
Graham, would you consider yourself a proactive leader, or are you a proactive leader who listens to advice?
I think I'm a bit of both. I think that I'm a bit of a hothead sometimes, and I'll sniff something that's not right, and I'll sniff it twice, and if I believe it, I'll run it down, hunt it down, and drive it into the ground.
Yeah, right.
And then afterwards, I'll find out whether I killed a rabbit or a lion. I'm not real sure, but I will drive anything. If I believe it's not right for WAM, or if someone's letting us down badly, yeah, I'll overreact probably. I think in the last 5-8 years, I've got a lot better at seeking more advice and listening to advice in the bigger picture of things, and trying to get the right set of things, because we've got a much bigger team now. We've got many more things happening. We've got a great IT department. We've got a great finance team, and we've nearly progressed now to being a data business rather than a construction business.
Yeah, right.
I think we can measure. Someone's probably measuring how many times I blink at the moment. There's someone measuring everything, which is great. So yeah, I think it's given us a lot more knowledge bank to consider actions before we act. But gee, we've got to consider them very swiftly now. We're going to be acting quickly. It's one thing that's really changed over the years, and that's pretty good. I think it keeps us on our toes. It gives us an edge over our opposition at times, because we're prepared to think really hard and act quick, seek advice from Manjot and others, and try and react on those bases.
Advice, react, advice, react.
Yeah.
That's the way.
And you've got the information at hand to make those decisions. That comes about by putting in proper systems and developing them. And you know where you are month to month.
Exactly. I mean, we used to just add up a few numbers on a page and hope for the best, I think, in the good old days.
Look at the cash and forget about the
How much is
liabilities.
in your pocket? Yeah, don't worry about that. They'll sort themselves out.
She'll be right, mate, kind
She'll
of
be
thing.
right, mate.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's probably enough for this episode. We'll tackle planning a succession in the next one, which will be really interesting. We've got a couple of different guys coming in to chat about it as well. Thank you both so much for being on this episode, and I'm sure we will talk in following episodes.
Thanks, Leah.
For further information, please visit our website hlb.com.au.